afternoon and welcome back. Registrar, can you kindly call the witness back? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Witness. Please sit down. As a matter of routine, may I remind you that you are still under oath. Madam Chair, over to you for continuation of our proceedings. Thank you.
Mr. Sanya, welcome back. Counsel, can we proceed, please? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Now, may I refer you to the compliance review for the year ended 31st December 2021?
2021.
Can you please advise whether you are currently?
Sorry, just a minute.
Yes?
Yes, 2021.
Yes. Please turn to page 9.
Yes.
Now, with respect to the functions of the accounting officer, can you please read the fifth point?
Yes.
Please read to us what that point is, says.
The accounting officer did not ensure that the procuring organization establishes an SPU as required by the GPPA Act, but they were not doing the right procedures of procurement.
And then, how about the subsequent one?
The accounting officer did not appoint the disposal committee.
And the next one?
The accounting officer did not ensure that the procuring organization properly documents procurement proceedings and manage record in accordance with the Act, Section 35.
Now, when you refer yourself back to the fifth point, you said that...
Sorry, Counsel, can you refer the witness to point 2?
Point 2. Yes, please read point 2.
The accounting officer did not ensure all the procurement transactions was done by the member of the SPU.
Yes.
You can continue.
Please proceed, ma'am.
No, you can continue now.
Yes. So, as far as you're concerned, under compliance, you were saying that the account officer did ensure all the procurement transactions were done by the members of the SPU.
Yes.
So it is your position that throughout this year 2021, there was no transaction done outside the SPU, based on this finding.
Now, the point, blood point is saying that the accounting officer did not ensure that procurement transactions are conducted by SPU.
Did ensure. It says did ensure.
Did ensure that all the procurement transactions were done by the SPU, meaning transactions were done by or conducted by SPU.
Entirely.
Yes.
So we'll get back to that. So the fifth point, also where you stated that the accounting officer did ensure that the procuring organization establishes an SPU as required by the GPA Act, but they were not doing the right procedures of procurement. Is that what is on the fifth point?
Yes, yes.
So in essence, what do you mean when you say that they were not doing the right procedures of procurement?
Now, we have the functions of the SPU.
Yes.
And this is a unit that is wholly and solely responsible for all procurements in the procuring organization.
Yes.
Now, these include what? They should ensure that a procurement plan is in place. They should be responsible of collecting quotations and so on.
Yes.
And at a certain threshold, they are responsible for procurements. And the contracts committee in somehow or to some extent are the decision-making sort of body. So that when decisions are taken by the contracts committee, the implementation will be done by the SPU. So if certain actions or certain things that should be done by the SPU are done by members outside the SPU, then that is exactly what we are talking about.
Very well. Now, when you turn to page 11,
Page 11.
with respect to the compliance,
Yes, page
section.
11, yes.
Yes, please, you have highlighted some of the key compliance regulation that the SPU did abide by. The third point, please. Can you read the third point?
Under compliance.
Yes.
The SPU did not maintain proper filing of the procurement proceedings
It appears as
in
if
line
it
with-
appears as if wherever you see did, you think that the subsequent word will be did not. But you may read properly again.
The
It says-
SPU did maintain proper
maintain,
filing
yes.
of the procurement proceedings in line with Section 35(2) of the GPPA Amendment Act.
Now, how do you reconcile that with the point on page 9 regarding the last point, regarding the fact that the account officer did not ensure that the procuring organization properly documents procurement proceedings and manage records in accordance with the relevant section? How do you reconcile these two? Because on one point, on page 9, you are saying there are no proper documentations of proceedings. On page 11, you are saying, in fact, there appears to be documentation of proceedings. How do you reconcile these two? How do you explain that?
Actually, I think this must be an error by the reporters, because they are contradictory.
Exactly.
They are contradictory. So it must be an error by those.
I'm not sure whether the commissioners are following. I'm trying to highlight a particular
we are
inconsistency.
Yes, we are following.
Yes,
So,
so
can you tell us what is the correct position, if
Yes.
you understand or
So,
don't know?
if you say it is probably an error, what would you say is then the correct position?
Actually, given the trend at Birkama Area Council, I will be tempted to say that the point under compliance, which is the SPU did not should have been did not maintain as in the
your position is looking at the trend. It appears as if
yes, I did not ensure that the SPU did the correct filing system and so on.
in fact on page 11, the other finding is that the SPU does not conduct periodic market survey and conduct all the procurements under the period under review. Is that it?
Yes, yes.
Let me jump to on page 22 with respect to the chapter 4, where you have the specific findings. Do you see that?
Page 22.
Yes. We'll come back. I just want to draw your attention to some of your earlier findings and then your subsequent specific findings as well. So on page 22, you have the examples of transactions. Like you said, this section presents the specific findings on the procurement transactions that were reviewed from the list of total procurements that Brikama Area Council carried out in the financial year, January to December 2021. Out of the 215 transactions, a sample of transactions were reviewed on the specific findings supplement and emphasized on general findings given in the previous chapter. Now, from page 22 to page 25, you have series of samples with respect to procurement being conducted for the year 2021.
Yes.
For Brikama Area Council. But in all the columns, or all the samples, you only have columns for compliance, but there were no non-compliant column. Do you see that? Why is that? Is it because they complied with all the procedure? Because if you look at it, it contradicts your findings in relation to page 9, when you say that they were not doing the right procedures of procurement. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes, I understand what you are saying.
Yes. So there seem to be, on one end, on page 9, your office highlighting the fact that the procurement organization did not follow laid down procedures. In fact, on point blank, you said they were not following it. And you gave us a table where you had about 5, 6, 7 samples, and all of the samples you highlight were only issues regarding compliance practices, and you failed to outline non-compliant practices. Can you please explain as to why that is the case?
Actually, like I said earlier, maybe it must be an error by the reviewers, because if you look at the findings, the points, you go over them carefully, you find out that some of the issues are negative and the other ones are positive.
Yes.
So they should have been separated to have compliance issues as well as the non-compliance issues.
What is the procedure for approval of these compliance review documents? Usually, when you conduct compliance review with respect to a particular institution, how do you come about approving the draft?
Okay, when the review is conducted.
Please speak through the microphone. Yes.
When the review is conducted, a report will be generated.
Yes.
By the team. So there is a team leader, normally, who will guide the whole process. So once the reports are completed, a draft will be generated, and then the draft will be sent to all the team members.
Yes.
Who will review it.
Yes.
And then to the senior, to the directors, and so on, and finally to the Director General. So when that is done, it will be sent back to the action officer with comments, and the comments or observations will be taken on board, and then the draft will be finalized, still a draft, which will be sent to the procuring organization to review, and then they will do their comments under the management responses and send back to the authority and to the action officer for finalization.
So now, when you have situations wherein, in this, like I say, for respect to Birkama Area Council for the year under review, 2021, wherein you have generally outlined that there were no procedural compliance with respect to the various procurement methods. So it is just right that it should be outlined, just like the other reports. Non-compliant.
Yes, non-compliance.
So please turn to chapter 4, that is page 22.
Page 22, okay.
Now, but let's say before that, you have page 15, wherein the table outlined the amount of single sourcing and request for quotation. Page 15. The amount for single restricted tendering is 3. The value is $100,500 on page 15.
On page 15, yes.
And for single sourcing, is 139 transactions. $2,182,000 is $187.51. And for request for quotation, it's about 73 transactions. You have $7,223,35.66 buttons. Do you see that?
Yes, yes.
Now, when you look at the number for single sourcing, for example,
yes.
what comes to your mind when you have that high number with respect to single sourcing? Does that encourage competition?
Now, if you look at the percentage,
Yes.
the amount involved
Yes.
constitutes 65% of the total number of
Yes.
procurements that were conducted in the year, 65%.
Yes.
This means that a lot of transactions were conducted on the single source,
Yes.
and each of them were bit and pieces within the threshold of single source.
Okay. Now, just to understand that point better, if you turn to page 16, where you have record keeping of the procurement activities.
Page 16.
Yes. You highlighted that, number one, that the procurement authority complied with, number one, there were delivery notes and receipt attached. Do you see that?
Record keeping of the procurement
Yes.
activities under what findings?
No.
Under compliance.
Yes, under compliance.
Yes.
That there were records for delivery notes and receipt attached. You see that?
Yes, yes.
The second point is that the files are not marked with relevant procurement reference and sequential codification.
Yes.
Is that a compliance procedure or a non-compliance?
It's a non-compliance.
But why is it under compliance?
Again, I think the same explanation that the reviewers and the author probably must have made a mistake. Instead of separating them, he put compliance and non-compliance issues together. But then, if you look at under it, you have a non-compliance, something like that.
Yes.
You have non-compliance issues. So that those some of the points mentioned there should have been under non-compliance as opposed to the compliance issues.
Now, why is there the need to have procurement files being marked with references and sequential codification? Why is that important?
Now, it is important to have transactions in that sequence so that, if you could remember in the morning, we talked about some missing files. Now, if transactions are to be done accordingly,
Yes.
as provided for by the law, and there is that proper codification with that sequential numbering. When a transaction is missing or a file is missing, you can easily trace it.
Okay. So then when you go to the next point, you said there was control mechanism for fuel. Do you see that?
Under non-compliance or?
Under compliance.
Sorry, under compliance.
Yes. And the other one was there was a purchase ledger. What I'm trying to do here now is you see that there is a trend of inconsistencies with respect to what should be under compliance and what should be under non-compliance in relation to your general findings as to the SPU's rule or mandate, where they fall short, and the contracts committee. I
Yes.
hope you are following.
Yes, I am.
Yes, and we have agreed that, well, there are inconsistencies in some of this thing. If you look at the non-compliance, you said that the PO did not maintain a comprehensive and individual file for all procurement activities. Is that correct?
Yes.
What is the other point?
Proper assessment of procurement records is a challenge.
Again, does that not contradict your findings on page 9 or page 11 with respect to the SPU, that they did maintain proper filing of the procurement proceedings in line with Section 35?
I think it contradicts. There is a contradiction.
The implications, you said, are the lack of receipts in the procurement file may imply that the procurement is not complete.
Yes.
And accountability cannot be assured.
Right.
So these were prevailing problems for Brigadier Area Council? Were they?
Yes, come again.
So in short, we will be fair to say that that when it comes to record keeping of the procurement activities for Brigadier Area Council, even for the year 2021, we have seen for 2020, 2019, they were really poor.
Yes.
But for 2021 as well, going by page 16, it appears as if it shows us as well that there was also poor keeping of records.
Yes, that's right.
Now, turn to page 17.
17.
With respect to procurement planning,
Okay.
what were the findings and the non-compliance issue raised on page 17?
The procuring organization does not carry out a pre-qualification procedure to determine approved list of registered suppliers as required by Section 23. Instead, the procuring organization relies on the eligibility list of the Gambia Public Procurement Authority to invite quotations or single source procurements.
What are the implications when the procurement authority does not carry out pre-qualification procedure?
Now, there will be no assurance that the suppliers or contractors were given equal opportunity or fairly treated, because in a pre-qualification there must be a procedure, and there must be basis for selecting. For your selection, there must be basis on which you select suppliers. So if the right procedure is not followed, then there will be no assurance that the suppliers were equally treated. Some of them will be disqualified on no basis, and those selected will be selected without any basis for
And
their
so-
selection.
And so to use the reverse explanation would be there will be biasness in the
Biasness.
identification
Yes,
of prospective suppliers.
that's right.
This word biasness here, how can you simplify it for people to understand when you say there can be biasness in relation to identifying prospective suppliers?
Now, when you talk about biasness, it's like being sort of your selection criteria being favorable for a particular supplier or group of suppliers.
Please speak louder and through the microphone. Yes. Proceed.
Now, biasness here means you are giving preference, sort of, or your requirements are geared towards favoring a particular supplier or group of suppliers.
Very well. Now, please turn to page 21. With respect to 2.3, the value for money.
Yes.
When we say value for money, what do we mean?
Value for money means fit for purpose. The item or contract that you are awarding, you get the maximum benefits with the lowest possible cost.
Now, you said that BAC does undertake periodic market survey and analysis of suppliers and prices in the market during the year. We have been informed that this exercise is done by the SPU and is normally reported to the contracts committee. When you say you have been informed, is this finding, this specific finding, backed by evidence in writing, or is it just an oral evidence that we are given to you through by the either the contracts committee or the procuring authority?
Now, when a market survey is done, obviously there should be a sort of a report.
Yes.
And the report should also be certified by members who conducted the said research.
Yes.
So I'm quite sure that our team of reviewers, of course, apart from the interviews that they conducted, they must have documents to show that a market survey was conducted.
Yes. Good. So going by that, I would request, let's say, proof of documentation with respect to ascertaining that GPA was in fact given proof by Brikama Area Council of periodic market survey for the year 2021.
Which page and which?
What?
Page?
No, we are still on page 21.
Okay.
Wherein because to me it appears as if you relied only on the oral evidence of whoever was being interviewed to actually come up with this position that periodic market survey was conducted for the year 2021. Because looking at the wording itself, and I could be wrong, that's why I'm requesting for proof. We have been informed that this exercise is done by the SPU and is normally reported to the contracts committee. So going by that statement, it appears as if it is through the interviews with respect to your team, whichever team was present on the ground, and Brikama Area Council, that they have been given oral testimony, and that's it. So you said to us that in situations like this, there must be evidence to back up any assertion. Is that not correct?
Apart from the interview, there will be evidences.
Exactly.
Why? Because we have a form, for example, for single source, you have 004, and for RFQs, you have the reporting form 003.
Yes.
And of course, the single sources may not require that sort of pre-qualification and the like. But then, if you look at the 004, which is the reporting form for RFQ, there is a section called pre-qualification determination.
Yes.
How did you pre-qualify? How did you arrive at selecting a certain number of suppliers that are to be considered in this competition? So there we look at all the reporting form, every section of the reporting form, to collect information and the like. So what I'm trying to explain is that apart from the interviews, because when you suspect something, you interview, but then you can go back to the documentation and try to verify certain things. So if the forms are administered correctly, apart from the interview, you will be able to determine the procedures and processes that are followed before arriving at such a decision.
Exactly. So if there were periodic market survey and analysis of suppliers, ideally you will have evidence to back that up. Is that not correct?
Yes.
So now I am requesting that you provide us with copies of periodic market survey analysis or reports of suppliers for the year 2021 from Bilkama Area Council.
Yes. Okay.
Do you get it?
Yes.
Yes, because lest we forget, one of the reasons or importance of conducting these market surveys, you said, is to make sure you know the prevailing price in the market. Is that not correct?
Yes.
And what was the other point that you highlighted? Trying to avoid making procurement or purchasing at a very high price.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And we discussed that when these two occur, there is the possibility of an individual or conducting procurement to engage in financial gains.
Yes.
Now, for the findings on chapter 4, page 22.
Page 22, yes.
How, when a particular procurement method is above the threshold, you said that there's a requirement that GPPA must approve.
Yes.
How do you issue this approval?
When a request is sent to the authority, we look at certain things. For example, we look at the threshold. Apart from that, we expect that the procurement must have been approved by the contracts committee. And here we look at the signatures, and we look at the minutes at which a contracts committee must have sat and agreed to the course of action. Because if you look at the provision of the Act, is the responsibility of the contracts committee to take procurement-related decisions. So if a transaction is submitted, we also look at the minutes. There must be minutes at which the contracts committee must have sat and agreed to the course of action that they intend to do. So when we look at that, we look at other things, the forms that must be submitted, like the requisition form 100, which provides for or requires the signatures of at least 3 individuals. One, the accounting officer, know that or to note that he is aware of the transaction. You have to the budgetary officer or the director of finance, who must also indicate that the funds are available, and then you have the signature of the
What
SPU, head of the SPU or the procurement officer.
now? What is the threshold for RFQ, request for quotation?
$500,000 is the lower limit, which requires or which may allow procuring organizations to proceed without the authority's approval. $500,000. But anything more than that, up to $1 million is. And if you want to apply RFQ, it must be subjected to the authority for prior approval before you proceed.
Now, on page 24, with respect to the procurement of 10 motorbike, the amount is $485,000.
Yes.
And if you look at the last 2 points, for example, you said that there was no minute of the contracts committee meeting as stipulated in GPPR and GPA Amendment Act 2018. Do you see that?
Yes, yes.
Now, where you don't have the the contracts committee meeting, what does that tell you?
If that is the case, and approval is given,
no, we don't have evidence that approval was given. In fact, on the contrary, we have just the point before that the quotations were not approved by the contracts committee. Do you see that? On the sixth point, the quotations were not approved by the contracts committee.
The quotations were not, yes, I have seen that.
Yes. Do you see that?
I have seen that.
So you have two main points. Number one, that the quotations were not approved by the contracts committee. And number two, that there was no minute of the contracts committee meeting as stipulated by law or required by law. So will it be fair to say this procurement was irregular, was not proper?
Now, if we are to go by what is provided here, yes, it is not regular, because obviously there should be approval by the contracts committee members of the quotations. But here, it doesn't mean that the quotations must be verified and the like. It's like...
Come again, what are you saying? It doesn't
no, what I am saying is, you know, you collect different quotations.
You cannot?
Different quotations will be collected.
Yes.
The quotations that are collected will be looked at and then evaluated.
Yes.
And at a meeting of the contracts committee, the member of the SPU will report to the contracts committee to tell them how all the procedures that are taken to arrive at a decision. So this will an evaluation report will be generated, which should include all these things.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, the contracts committee will agree will approve the evaluation report or disapprove the evaluation report. But for the quotations to be verified or approved by members of the contracts committee, it doesn't mean that each of the when quotations are collected, then the quotations will be taken round the members, and then the members attend or attest or sign on each of the quotations. It's the whole report that will explain everything, and the whole report will be either be approved or disapproved.
Now, you have told us what it does not mean, but now can you tell us what it means now? Your finding, what does it mean?
Actually, if we are to go by the report, it means that maybe because according to the report, there was no minutes.
Yes.
There was no minutes.
Yes.
To indicate acceptance or the contrast committee agreeing to the course of action.
Yes.
So in the absence of minutes, it's going to be very difficult to determine whether the whole process is approved by the contrast committee, including the quotations and the like.
I don't think it is a matter of it being difficult to determine. Let's just discuss the findings as they are. These are your findings, your office, not my finding or the commission's finding. Is that not correct?
Yes.
These are reports that you prepared in your office. Like you said, you have explained to us the level of or the stage of approval before you actually approve these findings. It goes through various people, and you look into, I suppose, all of these issues being discussed. So now, we have gone through the stage of possibilities. We only discussed what your findings are. Do you get it?
Yes, yes.
Where you don't have, when you go and conduct a compliance review, and you are not presented with evidence of contrast committee meeting for a particular procurement conducted, or approval in relation to quotations, what is the conclusion?
One may simply conclude that the procurement is irregular.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. The procurement is irregular. It is not for you to come up with contrast committee meeting, is it?
Yes.
It is for the procuring authority to do so,
Yes.
to provide you with evidence. So if they haven't done that, then the only conclusion would be that it is an irregular procurement. Is that not correct?
Yes, yes.
And that is only one observation. The other one is, but you have all of these under compliance.
Actually, that is why I am looking at the report carefully, and whatever the case may be, going back to the last question is the authority that is responsible. But then, if you look at the whole report, obviously there are a lot of inconsistencies that we observed. But again, it's the
In fact,
authority who should be
all of
blamed
these
for it.
inconsistencies are, number one, you have a host of irregular procedure or lack of following due process, and it is not clearly highlighted for this particular report. It is not, in fact, being highlighted on a separate column so that the reader will know that these are non-compliant issues. They are all put under compliant issues. When I first flipped through this document, it appears as if, well, they are being compliant in most of the things that they are doing. But that is not the case. Am I correct to say that?
Yes, you are right.
Let me ask a question. So, based on what you have just said, it will be correct now to say that as a result of the fact that there are no minutes, there are now no contract committee, there's no evidence to show that the contracts were approved properly or they followed due process, then it will be obvious that there will be no evaluation report.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. So for the last point, that is page 24, with respect to procurement of internet from QCell at an amount of $34,200. Page 24, RFQ was the method used.
Okay.
You see that. Do you see it?
Procurement of internet, yes?
Yes, yes. For an amount of $34,200.
Yes, yes.
Again, the same problems. You have only compliance procedures, but in fact, everything is being jungled up. There are a host of other issues in relation to non-compliance. One of it is that when you said on the 6th point that the quotations were not approved by the contracts committee, number one, and there was no minute of the contracts committee meeting. Do you see that? So this particular procurement was conducted was also did not follow due process. Are you together with me?
The first point, you said there was no...
No, the sixth point.
Okay,
You turn to page 25.
Okay.
Because there is an overlap. You will turn to page 25, you will see the sixth point.
Yes, the quotations were not approved by the contracts committee. There was no minute of the contracts committee meeting as stipulated in GPPR and the GPPA Amendment Act 2018.
Yes.
Yes.
I am saying, again, this would be an irregular procurement.
Yes. Good.
To conclude with you, this report for 2021, we have highlighted so many problems in relation to what Brikama Area Council did not do in compliance with the regulation or the act. Is that correct?
Yes.
We have discussed the fact that the special procurement unit, they don't have correct records keeping, so that when you come for your review, you can make reference to those documentations.
Yes.
And for some of the sampling with respect to the certain procurement being conducted, there were in fact no approvals from the contracts committee.
For some of them.
Yes.
Yes.
It cannot never be all.
Yes. Yes.
In fact, the method used for this review was sampling, because then you highlighted that there were samples of procurement conducted in Brikama for the year 2022. So it is in fact not all activities that were being reviewed.
Yes.
Generally.
Yes. All right.
So there is in fact a chance or that the problems that we have highlighted with respect to some of the procurements that have been conducted and in Brikama were not in fact approved. There may be a chance that in fact the number is higher than this.
Yes.
Yes. Honorable Chairperson, I am done with the year 2021 for Brikama Area Council. I would hand over to the commissioners if there are any possible questions to be asked.
Are there any questions from the... No questions?
May I have the permission of the commissioners to move to Basse Area Council? Now, may I draw your attention to the compliance?
Sorry. Before we proceed, Mr. Sanyang, in your statement,
Yes.
in your statement at page 5 of your statement, you have stated that prior review and approval of procurement request, where the monetary value is at a threshold of 1 million or above, or where the monetary value for each respective threshold is to be exceeded. That is to say, for prior review, approval must be sought.
Yes.
And would it now be correct to say that for Brikama Area Council, for all the transactions they did, and of which the threshold was above 1 million, no approval was granted by the authority? Is that correct?
Well,
Because reviewing the reports, we've not seen any approval that you have granted in those transactions.
most of these transactions, the compliance review report basically concentrate more on those transactions that were not subjected to prior approval. Because those that were prior approved, those ones are already, we've already seen those ones, and we assume that they did the right thing. If not, we correct them. before finally they do that. So the prior, the post review basically is more attention is paid on those transactions that were not subjected to our prior approval before they proceed.
But
So-
let me read you again. That's a subsection 1 of paragraph, your first paragraph. You said monitoring strategies. You said prior review activities in accordance with section 12, subsection 1A of the Act. No procuring organization shall engage in any procurement above such amount as specified in the regulations without obtaining the approval of the authority at every stage of the procurement proceeding, including tendering, requests for proposal, awards, and direct procurement, in brackets, single sourcing. My emphasis here is single sourcing. Hence, procuring organizations are required by law to send to the authority their procurements above the stipulated threshold for prior review and approval as follows. So I am saying that Brikama Area Council did not seek your approval on any of these transactions that they were doing. Am I correct?
Now, what I am saying in the statement is like the authority, a procuring organization shall not engage in any procurement above such a threshold
Yes,
without coming to the authority for prior approval.
yes,
Now, you have a single source threshold,
yes,
which is $30,000 is for goods and $20,000 is for goods and services. So anything below that, they can proceed without coming to the authority for prior approval. Anything below $20,000 is for goods and services, they can proceed without coming to the authority for prior approval. Now, for some reasons, if they, of course, meet some of the requirements to conduct a single source, if it is above the threshold, they can follow due process and get the approval of the authority before they
No, Mr.
proceed.
Sayang, my question is that we have seen in the report, and Council has taken us through the report, showing us that there are some transactions that were done that were above the threshold, and authority was not sought from your office. So I am saying in all of those transactions that were above the threshold, they did not seek authorization to do so, even though they know that they can do it by law. They can single source by law. The law provides that they can do it. But whereas they know they can do it and they meet the conditions, they must go to you and ask for your authorization,
Oh, yes.
which they have not done. That is my question. I said for all of those transactions that were beyond and above the threshold, they did not seek your approval. Is that the situation with Brikama?
Yes, I think
Yes,
I
that
got
is
your
what I'm
question
asking.
clear now.
Yes,
They should have sought our approval and they didn't.
yes.
And I think all of them are also indicated on the non-compliance. Unfortunately, like I said, there has been some inconsistencies.
There are some that are not indicated
Yeah,
on the
but
non-compliance.
they should all be non-compliance. If anything is above the threshold and the authority is, the approval is not sought from the authority and they conducted it, it must be a non-compliance issue. It's non-compliant.
Okay, so what is the effect of that non-compliance?
The effect of non-compliance is we will review, generate a report, and the report will be sent to the National Assembly and the other authorities concerned. And
Thank
that
you.
is what we do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Council, can you proceed?
Sorry, I just had a few questions in respect of the follow-up question that the chairperson asked. Mr. Sanyang, were you involved in the draft of the 2022 Act?
2022.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm assuming the authority had their input in what they thought should be in the legislation.
Yes.
Right. Is there anything in the legislation that allows you to sanction the procuring organizations for non-compliance?
Yes, there is.
Can you refer us to that?
not with the...
And I'm speaking specifically to these types of non-compliance.
Actually, I am not with the 2022 Act
No,
here.
let me lend you my copy. No, it's just that I need the information from the witness because he said that there are provisions relating to that in the Act. I'm not aware of such provisions, so if he can just direct us to where
Now,
that is.
if
so
you
we can
look
have
at,
it on record.
section 23, subsection 2.
Okay.
If, and I read, if a procuring organization staff engage in the procurement activities in any matter to be determined by him or her or any committee to which he or she is a member, has an interest, that is about conflict of interest and direct or indirect with economic operators that may be involved in the procurement process, he or she is required to, okay, that one is declaration of subsection 3. Any infringement of the provision of the Act by the procuring organization staff caused by misconduct or gross negligence shall be sanctioned by the procuring organization according to the relevant rules and regulations relating to conduct and discipline of staff. The sanctions may include initiating civil or criminal proceedings for the recuperation damage caused by the staff where necessary. 4, a staff of the procuring organization who willfully purchase or cause to be purchased any goods, works, or services contrary to the provision of this Act shall be personally liable for the cost of the purchase. Then you have section 24, fraud, corruption, and conflict of interest. Now, if you look at section 24, F, deliberating deliberately destroying, falsifying, altering, or concealing material evidence to
Sorry, you are quoting the wrong. You are not giving us the right reference. It's subsection 1E, sub 1. It's not F. Did you see it?
Subsection 1.
1E.
Yes.
Yes. It's not F.
Okay, sorry,
Yeah.
1E.
Yes, you can proceed.
Okay. Yes, I am trying to look at those provisions, but then the other ones that I cited, for example, 23, subsection 3, which says any infringement of the provisions of the Act by the procuring organization shall cause by organization staff caused by misconduct or gross negligence shall be sanctioned by the procuring organization according to the relevant rules and regulations. Now here, the Act itself briefly touched it, but then the sanctions and other things are more detailed in the regulations, which is yet to be finalized.
Okay, so you're saying that where the staff of a procuring organization carries out procurement or infringement of the provisions of the Act caused by misconduct or gross negligence shall be sanctioned by the procuring organization according to relevant rules and regulations. So in these cases that have been highlighted, where the procurement has been conducted outside of the threshold, no prior approval was sought, and as you said, they're not compliant, would you consider those gross negligence or misconduct by the staff?
Yes, but I just want to draw your attention to this is provided for by 2022 Act.
Yes.
And this particular report that we are looking at is guided by 2018 Amendment Act and regulations.
Very well. So do you have a corresponding provision in the 2014 Act?
According to I cannot fully remember the section, but for the 2014 Act and amended in 2018, there is this provision that anybody found wanting shall be liable for a fine of $1 million or 5 years imprisonment or both in 2019 Act.
I believe there's something similar like that in respect of the, I'm not sure if it was the procuring organization, but I'll check. I think it was the economic operator. But I think my question really is, so if you have these provisions in the Act, are there circumstances where, from when the Act was passed to now, where there's been non-compliance, like in these instances, where any sanctions have been imposed on the procuring organization staff?
Actually, no, because with all those provisions, I think there are lapses. Who is to impose that? So these are the kind of questions. But then for 2018, this final regulation that we are now about to finalize have clearly indicated how those sanctions and the procedures that can be taken to allow those sanctions to be taken place.
Can I just
to
ask,
take place.
in your experience, and considering the fact that the authority is the regulator for this procurement sector, or procurement, whatever you would call it, but the authority is the regulator, right? Do you think that it makes sense for the authority to be the one that imposes these sanctions on the procuring organization, considering that it's their staff and there might be issues with, them actually making reports or doing anything about it? Considering that you should regulate, do you think that this should come from your office?
That is why, in fact, it's been very difficult for us to take actions, because according to that dispensation, when we suspect something negative, we refer the matter to the Auditor General to conduct a more thorough audit of the suspected exercise. And then we, of course, in some instances, if it involves like a suspected fraud and the like, you have the other bodies that are responsible for fraud investigation and the like. And I have seen instances where the authority, of course, refers some cases to the CID office for an in-depth sort of finding out whether, as to establish whether it is a fraudulent activity or not. So we don't have that penal code to be able to, of course, take some of the steps that may be necessary to check some of these things that we are seeing.
So for the ones that you reported to the police, what were the outcomes?
Actually, at the moment, it's still under investigation. Yes. And for some parties, there are issues which were also referred to the Auditor General, and reports were generated which were discussed at the National Assembly. So when such things happen, there are also a sort of an oversight body that can take actions against certain issues.
But then does the National Assembly have powers to sanction? I mean, you have powers to sanction in your act. And even though they're an oversight body and there are other things that they might do, your powers are vested in you by the act, and you're able to take steps.
To me, I don't see those as powers. They are indications as to when somebody is found liable, what steps should be taken. But it's not clear as to how, because we are, for example, the authority cannot arrest anybody.
But the authority can refer the matter for investigation.
Exactly, and we wait for the recommendations of an investigation.
Can you maybe give us an indication of how many instances there have been where you've reported to the police for investigation?
I know
within the period May 2018 to January 2023?
It's only once that I can remember. Only once.
Only one. And
Yes.
that's the one that's currently under investigation?
Exactly, yes.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Sanyang, it is stated. You may correct us that for restricted tendering and for open bidding, you must advertise. But it has been noted in the reports that the most commonly used forms of procurement method are single source, request for quotation, and restricted tendering. And we have noted in the reports that no advertisement is made. In the law, I want to find out, is it mandatory for advertisement to be made when it is for restricted tender?
restricted tenders are never publicized.
They are not publicized.
It's open tenders which are publicized. Restricted tenders.
Is that the law?
Yes. Restricted tenders are restricted to a certain individual or contractors that may be known to you. So all what you do is to write to them and invite them. In fact, the documentation and everything about restricted and open tender are all the same. The only difference is the advertisement for open tender and the restricted nature of the other one, where suppliers and or contractors are only invited.
Okay, now let me refer you to Section 28 of the 2022 Act, subsection 4, which says all procurement subject to open bidding or restricted bidding, in other words known as restricted tender procedure, shall be advertised as specified in the regulations. Is that not what the law is saying? And you are saying otherwise?
Well, this is 2022 Act that you are referring to, is
so
it?
This particular provision is not found in the 2014-2018 legislation?
Yes, in 2022 Act, in 2018 Amendment Act. All procurements, of course, open tender is the default method.
No, my question is very clear. No, listen, my question is very clear. I am saying that we have not seen advertisement in the restricted tenders that we have seen in the reports for those activities that were done by Brikama Area Council, and whether it was a requirement by law. You said no. And I referred you to the law, which is saying that if you are doing open bidding or if you are doing restricted bidding, that is restricted tender, you are required under the law to advertise.
You are required under the law to advertise open tenders, not restricted tenders.
So then what is your interpretation and understanding of this provision that I read to you, which says all procurement subject to open bidding or restricted bidding procedure shall be advertised as specified in the regulations, which means these were provided for previously?
Anyway, open tenders should be advertised. And restricted tender probably, as indicated, that as provided for in the regulations, now the regulations
No, this is saying open tender or restricted bidding.
As provided
Either it is open or restricted.
Yes, as specified in the regulation.
Yes.
Now the regulation will go in detail to explain how the open tenders will be, of course, advertised, and probably the restricted tenders may be restricted to only a few people without advertisement.
No,
because once they are advertised, they are no more restricted.
Well, I don't seem to, maybe my question, you don't seem to understand my question, because what my understanding of the provision is and what the requirement of the law is and what we have seen in the reports and what you have explained, there are a lot of conflicts. But in any case, if that is your evidence, we will take that. Council?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. We will want to discuss the compliance review for Basse Area Council for the year ended 31st December 2019. Can you please turn to 2018?
2018, Basse Area Council.
2018, yes. Honorable Chairperson, do we have allowance of time to proceed a bit, or I realize it is sharp 4? May we be advised?
Yes, we have allowance because we got in way beyond 2:30, so we have allowance of time.
Thank you very much. Are you on the compliance review for the year ended 31st December 2018?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, with respect to Basse Area Council for the year 2018, on page 5, who are the individuals and their designation when you, with respect to the entry meeting?
Usman Toure, Chief Executive Officer. Abubakar Kante, Director of Finance.
Yes.
Mohamed Kijara, Procurement Officer. And members of the, you have other members of the compliance team, GPPA compliance team.
Now, how about the staff directly involved in the review process? On page 6. On page 6.
Yes, on page 6. Involved in these are Abubakar Kante,
Yes.
Finance Director.
Proceed.
Mohamed Kijara, Procurement Officer and
Yes.
member of the SPU, and you have Usman Toure, Chief Executive Officer.
Now, in your interviews and discussions, on page 6, with respect to the SPU, that is the Specialized Procurement Unit, what were your findings?
The findings during the interview with a staff of the SPU, we observed that interference in procurement processes is very high. And further, observed that there is only one staff at the SPU, which is heavily additional work for that staff. The team further observed that SPU is under the finance department. So basically, there are 3 key findings.
Now, based on those findings, you have implications you have highlighted.
Yes.
What are these implications?
One, having only one member in the SPU, which is responsible for the procurement. Procurements may be individualized.
What do you mean when you say it may be individualized?
Yes, because it's only one individual who will take a decision on either.
Please speak to the microphone. Go ahead, yes.
Yes, procurements may be individualized. Procurements may be individualized.
Meaning?
Meaning there is going to be one man show. Whatever decision he has taken, there is no checks or balances. It's only one decision.
So you only have,
which may be biased.
in Basse, you only have, for the year 2018, one individual named Mohamed Kijera, who is the procurement officer. And you are saying this is very dangerous in the sense that you may have one person who will just conduct the entire procurement.
Yes.
And what are the risks attached to that?
The individual may be biased
Yes.
in the first place, and because there are no checks and balances, one man show any price that is given should be considered because there is nobody who can counter. Quality may be compromised because, again, no checks and balances. If the individual decides to be biased, he may be tempted to give or award the contract to anybody without paying regards to whether the items or services are of that quality that is required or not.
So prices may be exorbitant,
Yes,
And
quality may be
may
compromised.
compromised, and there probably may be as well financial gains in relation to the lack of following procedure.
Yes.
Please proceed.
As part of the implications, you've said that procurements may be individualized for personal gains since there is lack of proper control and supervision on the side of the SPO. That is as a result of the one person that you found.
Yes, yes,
And also accountability and transparency are not assured.
yes.
So you did not find any assurance of accountability and transparency in their transactions.
Well,
But this is what you said in your report.
yes.
Yes. And the other one is that causes the use of wrong procedure, which can lead to wrong award decisions.
Yes, yes.
And this is pursuant to the documents that they gave to you to review, which are the purchase requisitions, the request for quotations, the invitation to tender, tender documents, evaluation reports, contract agreements, disposal process, and mandatory reports to the authority. These were the documents that were given to you to review,
Yes,
right?
yes.
All right, thank you. Council, you may proceed.
You may turn to page 7. With respect to the total procurement proceedings and their values.
Yes.
Now, there's a table that overlaps to page 8.
Yes, yes.
Now, how many transactions of single sourcing do you have?
963.
What is the value?
The value is 4,708,593.
And how about request for quotation?
27 requests for quotations.
The value of that?
$1,038 is, $38,450.00.
All right. And then, is there anything unusual with respect to the number of transactions for single sourcing?
Whether there is, come again?
Anything unusual with respect to the number of transactions for single sourcing?
Actually, other findings will look into each of these single sources specifically
Yes.
to come out with issues, if any, relative to each of those single source transactions. This is just a table to summarize, and the issues will be highlighted in the various write-ups for each of the transactions.
Where you see a very high number of single sourcing method being used, generally, your report will, on most occasions, advise that it is not the best or the most desired method of procurement. Is that accurate?
Yes, with
Why is single sourcing the least desired? of all the methods?
Actually, single source means buying from one individual without subjecting it to competition.
Yes.
And where there is no competition, there is likely that there will be no comparison to pick or select the best out of a pool of a number of offers given to you. If you have different offers, you pick from the best that suits you best. But then if there are no alternatives, you will, of course, accept whatever is given to you. So in cases like that, one, quality may be compromised, and two, prices may even be very high, unreasonably. So these are possible implications.
In fact, if one is to resort to, or let's say a procuring authority is to resort to single sourcing, and where it is due or it is appropriate, there are guidelines in relation to single sourcing. Is that not correct?
Yes.
What are these guidelines, or what are these procedural requirements?
Conditions for the
Yes.
use of single source.
Conditions, guidelines,
Now, you
requirements.
have conditions. One, if there are in emergency cases
Yes.
where life is at threat.
Please
Two,
proceed.
emergency that may involve the loss of life. Life is at threat. One can single source. If the transaction is within the threshold of $20,000 is for goods and services, and $30,000 is for works, or simple works, for example, you can single
Is it
source.
$30,000 or $50,000 for works and services?
Simple works, it's $30,000.
Please proceed.
So again, for compatibility,
Yes.
for example, you buy a computer and a part of this computer is missing, or you buy a vehicle, Mitsubishi. For example, you want to buy a machine, a machine for that matter. You cannot buy Toyota. So for compatibility purposes, you can single source.
Now, where does negotiations come in for single sourcing?
Now, you can negotiate at any stage. You can negotiate at any stage when, for example,
What I mean is negotiation a requirement or a condition?
a condition for single source.
Yes.
No.
All right. What can you tell us about negotiation?
First of all, let me make it clear that in the Act or regulations, where we have a list of conditions for the use of single source, there is nothing like negotiation.
Okay.
But again, to explain why negotiation should not be a condition, then it means that even those transactions that should be open tender can be negotiated.
What is
If that
negotiation?
the case. Negotiation is to engage a supplier or contractor to come into terms. Either you increase or you have your requirements and so on.
Yes.
So it's not a condition anyway for single source, for the use of or application of single source. It's not a condition. It's not among the conditions for the application of single source.
Now, we have, with respect to the regulation 2018, where it states that on section 129, procedure for negotiation. Do you have the document with you?
The
regulation 2018.
No, I don't have it, but if you can proceed.
Please, you may make a reference to 2018 regulation. Page 44, section 129.
Page?
Page 44. 44.
Yes.
Do you see section 129 with respect to procedure for negotiation? On part 5, sub-part 5, single source procurement. On part 5, the heading is single source procurement. It lay down the procedure or the requirements or the conditions. Do you see that?
Regulations 20. Now, can I also refer you to, is it possible, sorry, to refer you to the conditions for the use of single source as provided for by the Act?
As far as we'll now come back and discuss this. Is that okay?
Yes, yes.
Yes, you can. What document is that?
Now, this is the 2014 Act amendment, or amended in 2018.
2014 Act.
Yes.
Please proceed.
Now, section 44.
Yes.
Conditions for the use of single source procurement.
Yes.
Now, I want us to go through whether you will see anything like negotiations under these conditions.
Go ahead.
1. The single source procurement method may be used only in the following circumstances. 1. Where the estimated value of the procurement does not exceed the amount set in the regulations.
Yes.
2. Where only one supplier has the technical capability.
Yes.
Or capacity.
Where only one supplier?
Only one supplier has
the technical
capability or capacity to fulfill the procurement requirements, or the exclusive right to manufacture or manufacture. Exclusive right.
Yes, of manufacturer.
Yes. You can single source.
Yes.
Where there is an emergency need for the goods, works, or consultancy services involving an imminent threat to the physical safety of the population.
Threat to safety of population.
Yes. D. Where the procuring organization, having procured goods, works, or consultancy services from a supplier, determines that additional goods, works, or services must be procured from the same source for reasons of standardization or because of the need for compatibility with existing goods, equipment, technology, works, or services, taking into account 1, the effectiveness of the original. You have 2, the limited size of the proposed procurement. You have 3, the reasonableness of the price, the unsuitability of alternative to the goods, and E, the purchase or perishable commodities such as fresh fruits and so on. And number 2, a single source procurement on the grounds referred to in subsection 1B, 1B, C, and D shall be subject to approval by the. So these are the conditions provided for.
No, they are not conditions. They are grounds to resort to single sourcing. Let us just be clear.
Maybe you suggest an amendment to the act, because this is what we have.
Can you now read again the last part? Say these are the grounds for?
The last part.
The professor therein, you said yes.
Number 2.
Yes.
A single source procurement on the grounds referred to
yes.
in subsection 1B, C, and D
yes.
shall be subject to approval by the authority, which shall.
Can you come again? A single source procurement?
A single source procurement on the grounds.
On the grounds.
Yes.
So I am not making amendment to the act, neither am I intending to make amendment to the act. That is what the Act says. Those are grounds for single source procurement. Now,
what do we have in the heading? What does the heading say? The heading is conditions for the use of single source.
Yes.
That is the heading.
Yes. Listen, all this you set out, can you, only on this circumstances can an institution resort to single sourcing.
Yes.
Exactly. That is different from whilst now you have chosen to go by a single source for a particular procurement, the rules they are in, the regulation they are in, what to follow. Or are you telling me there are no rules to follow, there are no regulations to follow? Is there a regulation for any of these? When now an institution wants to, let's say for example, in all of these you have outlined, if becoming area council or Basi area council thinks that for the procurement of this particular good, for example, single sourcing is the best, is there any regulation that now governs how it is supposed to be conducted?
Sorry, Council, but sorry, but if I can take you back to your question. Your question was the conditions of single source, and that is why I even made reference to this. You didn't ask about the procedures. You asked about the conditions, and these are the conditions as provided for in the Act. So here, probably you are asking for the procedures that should be taken. But going back to your question, honestly, you asked for the conditions, and I repeated it.
Did you
repeatedly asked for the conditions.
We don't have a disagreement here.
Yeah,
did you not tell me that inspection of goods or also negotiation is not part of single sourcing?
I said negotiation is not under the conditions as per the provisions of the Act, and that is proven. We have gone through them one by one, and we have not seen anything like negotiation under the conditions, which is clear here.
We are not quarreling.
No, we are not quarreling.
Do you have a problem with the word condition, or you have a problem with the fact that for a single source, it is regulated by the regulation, and one must follow, whether you call it conditions, you call it grounds, you call it rules. In fact, you realize that on most occasions, I will use three words: procedure, regulation, conditions, however you call it. My point is,
done in different ways. Okay? You have some that are within the threshold. Very simple and straightforward. And the amount is not that much. In such cases, you may not require any negotiation. But if the procurement is of millions of dollars, yes, negotiation may be a requirement, because you are not...
What you are saying, is it your opinion, or is it what the law or the regulation dictates?
Yes,
yes,
it's provided for by the Act, by the regulation.
Which regulation?
The regulations are cited by
2018?
Pardon?
2018 regulation.
Yes, most likely.
Let me make life easy for you. Please, if you are sure of anything, let's discuss it and we move on. If you're not sure, we can always verify, we move on. But are you saying single sourcing is optional as per the regulation of 2018? Is that what you are saying?
When you say single source is optional...
Sorry, negotiation.
Negotiation
is it optional? You know, I referred you to the regulation 2018. You didn't even read it. It's just for us to have discussion. You just jump straight to another act. Now, do you want to? I think you have a copy.
No, I don't have the copy at the moment.
I believe I sent a copy to you for the 2018 regulation. You didn't even read section 129. I don't know why. But now, can we visit section 129 to understand the negotiation, whether it is a requirement or not, and what the law says regarding negotiations?
Okay.
Yes, so you may turn to page 44, section 129. Do you see it?
Procedures, yes.
Procedures for?
Negotiation.
Negotiations. Again, and then what are the procedures for negotiation?
A procuring organization shall only enter into negotiation
Yes.
with an approved successful proposal
Yes.
by the contract.
By the contracts committee.
By the contracts committee.
Yes. Which means after an approval is given for single sourcing by the contracts committee, then there can be negotiation. Is that not correct?
If there should be negotiations, it should only be done by the contracts committee.
I am not saying who is supposed to do the negotiation.
Sorry.
We are discussing the requirement as per single sourcing, the procedure. Once it has been approved, what is the procedure? What follows next? And we are discussing the importance of negotiation. See, I am not even trying to have a debate with you as to whether you know it or not. I will excuse you for that. In fact, the main reason is I want the commissioners to understand the importance of negotiation. You understand that? Because the entire idea of procurement is to make sure you have value for
Yes, I understand.
value for what? Value for money.
Yes.
And so that we will not spend millions of dollars or lots of money trying to procure a certain item at an exorbitant amount of money with public funds. Is that not correct?
Council.
Try to understand me first.
Yes.
Yes, so that's why I want us to understand. If it is not a requirement, I will still hear from you. If it is a requirement, I will still hear from you. But help us understand 129, please.
Okay.
Yes.
I think, listen to me very carefully. Is language. Probably legal people have better understanding of what. Now, a procuring organization shall only enter into negotiation with an approved successful proposal by the contracts committee.
Yes.
This is still not suggesting that negotiation is mandatory. It says if there is negotiation, only members of the contracts committee shall do it. Number two, the negotiation to be conducted, if there is any, to be conducted by at least 2 members of staff of the procuring organization appointed by the accounting officer or the head of the procuring organization or contracts committee. If there is going to be negotiation.
Did you see, don't try. Why are we having this? Mr. Is it Sane or Sanyang?
No, sorry.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. It appears as if you are hell-bent on having a very unnecessary argument. I am not here for that. And we will not have it. So let's try to limit ourselves with what the law says. I don't know why you're being defensive, because I'm not accusing you of anything. Under single source procurement, the heading is part 5, single source procurement. Is that not the heading?
Yes.
And under that heading, if you turn to the page 43, it tells you procedure for request for quotation.
Yes.
Do you see that? Mm-hmm. And for all other methods, it will have a heading of its own and tell you what it entails. Is that not it?
Yes.
Did you see negotiation on procedure for request for quotation?
No.
Exactly. Where did you see that?
Under single source.
So let's discuss it.
And
the idea that where it is applicable is not on this document. It's not on this with respect to on section 129. So don't import any word there. Let's try to understand it. And I am okay with the fact that if it is not a requirement, it's not a requirement, we move it. I have no interest in it. I am saying there were Mr. Tambora came and the Director General, we discussed negotiations, the importance of negotiations. You understand? And so, on 129, you have the heading. What is the heading?
Procedures for negotiation.
For negotiation. It says that a procuring organization shall only enter into negotiation with an approved successful proposal by the contracts committee. Once the contracts committee has approved a particular single sourcing, then they can enter into negotiation. So if you go to sub 2, the negotiation to be conducted by at least 2 members of staff of the procuring organization appointed by the accounting officer or the head of the procuring organization or contracts committee. It did not say may. Also, if you go to part 3, that the members of staff conducting the negotiation to prepare a report of the negotiations and submit it to the contracts committee for decision making. And the last point is the said report to form part of the records of the procurement. The said reports to form part of the procurement. The law is very simple. It tells you the single source and what it entails. Mm-hmm. I'm not here to draw interpretation with respect to the law. I am saying that negotiation seems to be key part of single sourcing. If it is your evidence that it is not, we can move on.
Council, I think probably you misunderstand me.
Now you help me understand.
I am not saying that negotiation is not important. It's very important. In all aspects, it's very important. If I may take you back to what you said. In the first place, you said conditions of single source. Then you say grounds of single source. These are the two things that you mentioned about. These are the two things. For me, what I am saying is
sorry, can I
single
intervene?
source
Sorry,
is not...
Okay, Mr. Sanya, sorry for intervening. And at this point, it seems we are going around the issue. I believe if you understand the council's questions, can you answer them direct? Or in an instance where you do not understand them, tell him to clarify so that you can answer. It's either you appreciate what the question is, you understand it, you answer it, or you don't appreciate or you don't understand it, you say you don't understand or you do not agree with his position. So these are the two things before we keep repeating ourselves.
Okay.
Right? So can we kindly conclude on that because we have to rise. Thank you. Thank you, Council.
Mr. So now let's discuss the importance of negotiation and we move on. Why is it important to negotiate?
Actually, first of all, you look at the purpose of negotiations. It could be trying to bring the price down. You can negotiate on price, which is very important because if you are able to bring the price of something from high to lower, obviously it's going to be savings for you. That's one thing. You may negotiate on the scope of something, the extent of a work, consultancy services,
yes,
or something of that nature, which is also very important. And in negotiating that, obviously, you are trying to draw the supplier's attention or the contractor's attention to what you wanted. Meaning you are looking at your requirements and try to ensure that these are met. So with that, obviously, you are trying to drive at ensuring probably getting the highest quality with the minimum possible cost. You can get savings from it, and you can also improve quality on whatever offer is given to you. So it's very important.
Now, please turn the time. Yeah.
If can that be the last question because it's past 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Please turn to page 13.
Page 13.
Are you there?
Not yet, because page 13.
Yes.
Yes, page 13.
Now, there were non-compliance issues in relation to the SPU. Do you see that?
Yes, yes.
Please run us through the non-compliance issues.
One, there was no evidence that the SPU had conducted periodic market surveys to inform the pricing or the placing, should be pricing.
Yes, proceed, please.
Of orders, the placing of orders or adjudications or adjudication by the contracts committee. 2, the SPU did not act as the secretariat to the disposal committee. And 3, the SPU does not publish notice of award and notices of tender acceptance.
Now, if you look at the Basse Area Council,
yes,
there seemed to be a total disorganization in relation to their procurement activities being conducted for the year under review 2018. Is that correct? Total disregard of the procedure.
Yes, yes.
In fact, we will conclude by saying that there is a table below.
Yeah.
But immediately before the table below, you will see that that's still on page 13. That an amount of $446,393 was spent on procurement of fuel without involving the specialized procurement unit. Do you see that?
Yes, that's the table. I think is the total of this.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
So on this particular amount, when you go to conduct these reviews generally, have you in fact done a review yourself individually, leading the team to go and conduct reviews?
Yes.
So when you go to conduct this compliance review or reviews, and you have the conclusion that a certain transaction was being done or conducted, and the unit or the committee that is supposed to conduct that particular transaction, in this case, the specialized procurement unit, did not in fact conduct the transaction, what will normally inform your decision that in fact this transaction was not committed, was done outside the specialized procurement unit?
The decision to inform us that.
Yes, what will normally give you an informed decision? How do you come about having this conclusion?
Now, one, we look at the requisition.
Yes.
From 100, which should be completed by the specialized procurement unit.
The requisition form?
Yes, requisition form.
Yes.
And then you look at the evaluation report.
Yes.
How it is conducted. You look at because in the evaluation report, you expect to see different opinions. And finally, the final agreement of the evaluation report. So if you look at the report itself, look at the members of the evaluation team, and then verify whether they are members of the SPU or not.
Good. So now, when you see the list, you can see that whether, in fact, those who that conducted the transactions are members of the SPU.
Yes.
So you will definitely have a list to ascertain who conducted the transactions.
Yes. Sometimes you come across instances where a form will be completed, for example, Form 100, which is the requisition, signed by the CEO and the like, and the finance director, for example, and then the procurement officer will not sign.
Yes.
So if the procurement officer fails to sign, you may conclude that he is either not part of it, or he was forced to prepare a report and then deliberately refuse to sign. So
yes.
these can all happen.
Yes. Okay. Then in this situation, when you say $446,393 was procured on fuel without involving the SPU, then of course, naturally, you will have evidence of those who signed this.
Yeah.
Now, if we are to request for, because the table below, we will discuss probably tomorrow, we have a host, so many transactions, about 84 transactions that you have sampled out, which in 2018, that gave us this amount, $446,393. We'll go into the table probably tomorrow.
Yeah.
So can you give us when you come back, can you provide us with the list of individuals or the individual that conducted these transactions to back up the assertion that the person is not part of the SPU?
When we come back tomorrow.
Tomorrow or day after tomorrow?
Yeah, maybe because I cannot. Your first question was whether I have ever involved in something of this nature.
Yes.
Exactly. I was when I was an officer and the like, but now I am not going out. So, but then I have an idea of how it is conducted.
Yes.
So what I want to say is, if, for example, the documents that we have, because Basse is very far, if, for example, during the collection of their data and the like, they just took note and those people, the names are not written and the like, obviously, it's going to be very difficult to get that evidence tomorrow or even at the end of this week, given that Basse is very far. But then I want to believe that, yes, we can, if given the enough time for it. I'm not sure whether the documents, the raw materials, the raw data that they collected before coming out with this report have those names and the like. If they are, yes, we can get them from the office here, but if not, we have to go back to Basse and then verify some of these things.
Yes, so please help us with the name of individuals or the individual involved in the procuring of these of the fuel as outlined in your table. You have listed for the 84 transactions. We will need evidence of that, okay?
Okay.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I think we can stop here for today.
Thank you so much, Council. Good evening to you all, and we may rise, may reconvene tomorrow at 10, inshallah.